Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me, bless his holy name.
Father Ronnie Garcia, who's the founder and president of the National Association of Exorcists of Venezuela, did an interview on July 31st where he warned about the influence and increase of esoteric rites in Venezuela and the growing participation of laypeople in satanic rites and visits to witches. In that same interview, he also talked about how the people worship Maria Leonza, a spiritual figure who emerged in the 20th century from the fusion of indigenous African and spiritualist beliefs. The myth has roots in indigenous legends and became established as a popular practice in the 1950s, gaining national visibility, and thousands of people would gather to perform their rituals. Syncretic practices converge, blending indigenous, African, and folk elements. Possession rituals and invocations of spirits are observed. They would use tobacco and alcoholic beverages, drums, and body language. Through all of this, they seek to channel spiritual entities. And Father Garcia, rightly so, emphasizes that these practices are not compatible with the Christian faith and recalls that the Church teaches that Spiritism can open doors to spiritual influences that do not come from God. And he said, and I quote, "Those who participate will always be exposed to spiritual confusion. They also become psychologically and emotionally vulnerable. Of course, there's also demonic influence because invoking these entities opens doors for evil." Unquote. And Father Garcia pointed out that these sessions have grown in Venezuela in recent years, warning that they can easily become an addiction, and also why the National Association of Exorcists was founded. And when I first read this particular interview of Father Garcia, I was reminded of another interview where Father Carlos Martins talked a little bit about those who perform the Black Mass, why they do it on Fridays. Let me share you this clip for a moment.
Yeah, and what is the purpose of this so-called Black Mass? I mean, why is it taking place on a Friday?
Sure. Well, on the Friday, that one's easy to answer because Friday is the day of the Lord's Passion. And so it's a mockery of the Passion. You know, Satanism, there's two kinds of Satanists or two kind of satanic entities. Cultic Satanism and individual Satanism. Cultic Satanism, these are old cults. Many of them are ancient. You never hear about them because they operate secretly. They don't want new membership. They raise their members internally. So these are old, kind of akin to the strategy of the Mafia. Almost no one is able to enter into the Mafia save from those in a select group that are already related to the family. That is cultic Satanism. Individual Satanism, the folks who do that, they are folks who would be willing to advertise themselves, to identify themselves as Satanists. But those folks cover the gamut. Some of them, as in the case of this group here that are celebrating and organizing the Satanic Black Mass, they don't even believe in God. They don't even believe in the devil. So they adopt the figure of the devil. They subscribe to the label Satanism because that asserts their independence. It asserts their autonomy. But you can have folks within that group who believe in the devil and who have the same belief that we have in God, although the devotion is perverted. They believe he is the bad guy and Satan is the good guy. So the gamut is covered. And this group has already identified where on the spectrum they land. And so for us, our response should be one of prayer. We are being attacked. Our faith is being ridiculed. Our faith is being desecrated. If they in fact stole one of the Eucharistic hosts from a parish to be used in the Mass, there is a profound act of sacrilege there. And the Church responds like it always responds, with prayer and supplication.
And here's another clip of Father Carlos Martins in a different interview, but still on the same subject. Listen to this.
Yeah, so we're talking about in the realm of organized Satanism. We're talking about cults, but cults, this is not a cult like your Jim Jones cult. These are ancient cults. These are cults, by the word ancient, I mean very, very old, many generations. They're not interested in new membership, right? They don't want you to join them. They're not out to convert you to evangelize you into their enterprise. They don't give a rat's rump about you. They raise their own members. They breed them. So they have a collection of breeders. They bring children into the world, the births of whom are unregistered. So no one knows that they live. So these are not people living next door, by and large. They're living out in the country. They're living in a realm by which the neighbors are not going to see the children. Or if they see them, they're not going to know that they're unregistered. or if they do know, they believe they're homeschooled or something like that. These are children that a cult breeds to perpetuate the cult, but also to provide bodies, to provide victims for its sacrifices. The cults use them, and I've encountered numerous examples of this. I've had 3 possession cases where someone has broken free, and this was a person who was used in the production of child pornography. So there were videos filmed, recorded, and sold, and this is one of the ways in which the cult makes money. Now, the interesting thing about this is this. We hear about periodically the authorities discovering a cache of child pornography. We hear about them arresting a ring of the consumers of that type of pornography, and we'll hear about 87 people were arrested, 14 were lawyers, 23 were teachers, et cetera, et cetera. They release all kinds of statistics, informations, and breakdown numbers with regard to it, but you have never heard them say that they discovered the child actors. Because in terms of the cults, by the time that porn is released, those actors don't exist any longer. Right? They're gone. They're gone. And so this is the visceral nature of that. They've got lots invested in this. And the ones that I met, all 3 of them, were escapees. So they managed to escape. They managed to set themselves free by the skin of their teeth, because every resource that cult could muster up was exerted in trying to capture back these individuals, and all 3 of them were living under assumed identities. They were their identities, and here's the thing. They had to be given assumed identities regardless, because none of them had a birth certificate. Right? None of them had a registered ID with the government. So some of them were called by multiple names, and they didn't understand themselves. Like, I mean, your name is Joe, my name is Carlos. Some of them never had that experience of being known by one name. There was a multitude given to them. So these folks have had just a horrific experience of life, and this is part of the reality that is there. So I felt, we did have episodes in the 80s where there was this kind of phobia that cults were taking over children's camps and so forth, and apparently much of that was proven to be false. I'm not speaking to that at all. I don't know anything about what happened in the 1980s per se. I'm not an expert in that. I don't have any experience in that. And I don't have a verdict or a judgment by which I feel like I have anything to offer about what was discovered by the authorities or lack thereof. But I will tell you that I do know cults exist. I've been witness to it. And I've had my own retaliation against me by some of them. And it is incredible, the damage that has been done to the individuals that have escaped. I mean, they will never live normal lives like what you and I consider normal, because their upbringing was so horrific.
And just before we get to the end of this video, for those of you listening, I think it's important to remember what getting close to the devil really means, and it's despair. Listen to this clip of Senior Stephen Rossetti for a bit.
One thing I've noticed working with those who have demonic afflictions is oftentimes when you ask them how they're feeling, especially when the demons are beginning to manifest, they'll say, I feel this incredibly powerful sense of despair, and it's all overwhelming. And that should be a sign to the exorcist that there are demons present and they're manifesting in that way. Where does all despair ultimately come from? Of course, it comes from hell. There is no hope in hell because there is no God. As Dante said in the Inferno, "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here." And also, St. Faustina spoke to us of the seven sufferings of hell. And one of those major sufferings is despair. It is a hallmark of hell and the presence of demons. I was listening to a near-death experience the other day, and of course these are not de fide, but I find them some of them interesting, and perhaps I think there's some truth to many of them because they have the real signs of the truth. And this man sadly died and was on the brink of hell, and Jesus saved him, thank God. But he said what he felt was this overpowering despair. He said this despair was worse than all the sufferings of hell because there's just no hope, no hope. So the takeaway from this: first, exorcists, when you see your clients feeling this powerful sense of despair, let them know this is not them. This comes from the demons. And so for those of you who feel despair, whether you have a demonic affliction or not, all despair ultimately does come from the dark world and the demons.
Well then, that will be all for the video this time. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to be here again, and hopefully all of you have learned a lot from this video. Remember, if there's any feedback or suggestion, please let us know in the comments below. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for your continuous support, contributions, and prayers. And until the next one, thanks again for watching, and may God bless you.